This podcast is brought to you by lineupmedia.fm.
Because if you can tell me what your habits are, I can tell you what sort of a person you are. I can tell you what your future looks like.
But like I always say, life is 10% what happens to you, it's 90% what you do about it.
The people who are most effective in the workplace believe that their future is going to be bigger than their past. When people don't believe that their future is going to be bigger than their past, they begin to disengage.
You're listening to The Circuit of Success, a podcast dedicated to helping you achieve success in every facet of life. Only on the lineupmedia.fm podcast network. Now, your host, Brett Gilliland.
Welcome to The Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland. Today, I've got Nelson Tressler. Nelson, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Brett. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's good to have you. You're coming with us from Las Vegas, Nevada, right?
Yep, here in Vegas.
Well, you can't beat that. What's going well in Vegas right now?
You know what it seems like? I just saw an ad that said, right above them taking off some of the restrictions that we were pretty packed down there. So that's exciting. It's been a ghost town for a year. So excited that Vegas is coming back. We definitely need a lot of people here are, struggling.
That's right. I've had some buddies that are out there right now for they went out there for the March Madness this past weekend. So hopefully that stuff's opening back up for you guys, as I know that's a big part of the business, obviously, out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are an author, you are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're all sorts of things, man. So, but you don't just wake up and get to do that, but you're also the founder and CEO of I Got Smarter, right? The author, which we're going to talk about, The Unlucky Sperm Club. What a name for a book, man.
Yeah. I get a lot of eyebrows raised on that, and people don't know what to expect. But once you hear my backstory, it kind of makes sense.
Right. Awesome. Well, why don't you share a little bit of that with us, if you don't mind? Why don't you talk about that? What's made you the man you are today, and had the success that you've had?
Yeah, I got quite the origin story. My mom got pregnant with me when she was 15 years old. And while she was pregnant with me, her father, who was the local trash collector in a small town in central Pennsylvania, drove into the town square, spotted two police officers, stuck a gun out the window and opened fire on those police officers, killing one and critically wounding another. And eventually my grandfather's captured and brought to stand trial where he's facing the death penalty. And during his murder trial, my mom gets up and testifies to the jury that the reason that her father had shot and killed that police officer was that police officer had raped her, and she was now pregnant with his baby, who was me. And my mom's testimony worked. The first trial ended in a hung jury. Eventually, my grandfather was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Because of my mom's testimony, the death penalty came off the table, where he eventually spent the rest of his life, more than 40 years behind bars, leaving behind my mom. She came from a family of 15 children, and now me in this small town to deal with the consequences of what my grandfather had done.
Wow. That's an unbelievable story. Say we dove right in. We just dove right in, Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I mean, my life, doesn't get any easier from there. Born in a small town, everything surrounding my birth. So I'm dealing with all of that. I'm born to a 15-year-old mother. Eventually, she meets a man in a bar who becomes my stepfather. And we quickly come to find out that he's an alcoholic, very physically and emotionally abusive to me and my mom almost daily. And eventually, in quick succession, they have 4 children. And because of the lifestyle that they're living, a lot of the basic needs of my siblings fall upon me as the oldest, from bottle feeding to diaper changing to waking up at 2 a.m. to put crying babies back to sleep. And at this stage of my mom's life, she would rather me stay home and help her with the kids. School was no priority. And I remember at the end of 4th grade, how excited you get at the last day of school. You want to see who your homeroom teacher is for the next year. And I remember looking down at my report card and seeing that I had straight Fs. and that I'd be repeating the fourth grade. And it shouldn't have come to any surprise. I probably missed 50 or 60 days of school that year. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I couldn't spell. The next year I get placed into special ed. Come to find out I have dyslexia. And my life went that way until one day my stepfather was walking home drunk from a bar. There was somebody else driving home drunk from that bar, and they end up hitting and killing him.
Jeez.
And as hard as my mom's life has been to this point, you know, my mom has no education. She's dropped out of school in the 8th grade. She's been physically and emotionally abused her entire life. But losing my stepfather pretty much broke my mom. She could not figure out how she was going to care for 5 small children on her own. And it's at this time that she decides that she's going to take her own life, and she attempts suicide. And fortunately, she's not successful. But whenever she gets out of the hospital, it's at that time that my family gets split up. And I go to live with my grandmother, who is the wife of the man who shot and killed the police officer.
Wow. So how do you, Nelson, I mean, what is your thinking behind why you've become so successful with that? I mean, my goodness, the amount of tragedy, right, that you've dealt with in your life, you're especially that young of a life at that time. How have you battled through that, man?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy, as you can imagine. Growing up in a small town, everybody knows your business.
Right.
Everybody absolutely,
especially that business.
Yeah. Everybody knew that and knew of my family. So I talk about a lot of that in the Unlucky Sperm Club and growing up in that. But one day, you know, when I moved in with my grandmother, for the first time in my life, there was always food in the house. The lights always turned on when you hit the switch, and there was always heat in the house in the wintertime. So my survival instincts were kind of able to relax for some time. And right. I started to reflect, where am I going to end up, you know, when I become an adult and I have a family? And I looked and I'm like, I didn't like where I was ending up. I didn't like, you know, my uncle had owned the garbage route after my grandfather went to prison. And I worked on the garbage truck since I was 9 years old to make money. And, you know, I didn't want to end up there. I love the people who worked there and had some great times, but that wasn't what I wanted for my life. And then one day I was at school and a counselor from Penn State University came down and talked about what it was going to take to get into college. And that was when bells and whistles kind of went off in my head. Is like, man, if I could get a college degree from that point on, my life would be perfect. And that's kind of what I was thinking. And you know what happens when you tell yourself you're going to do something that's going to be hard? That voice screams at you, man, just stop. Don't even think about it. You're never going to do it. Right. And I remember thinking to myself, Nelson, you're in special ed, man. You can't read, you can't write, you can't spell. Of the family that I came from, of my mom's 15 brothers and sisters, 2 had ever graduated high school. None had ever even gone to college. But I saw where I was going and I'm like, what do I have to lose? And I started to do what I thought I needed to do to get into college. And 12 years after that assembly, 4 different universities, 4 years in the United States Air Force, I became that first person in my family to get a college degree.
Clapping for you, man. For those that are listening, if you can't hear it, I'm clapping. That is unbelievable, because I mean, there's thousands, millions of people, right, that have had a tough upbringing and can do exactly what you said. Who am I to think that I can go do this? Who am I to believe that I'm the one that's going to be the first kid in my family to graduate from college? But yet you did it. And so I wonder, like, did you see something? Did you know, obviously, you know, the proverbial, I tasted it. Like, what was it though, man, that like said, yeah, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go start businesses. I mean, what was your job out of college? I mean, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think college was just that first thing, and it was just like I knew where I was going to end up if I didn't do it. And it's kind of that point where the pain was too much. I mean, what was waiting for me in that small town, what I had to deal with, I didn't want that. And I absolutely didn't want it for my family. Yeah. And I think because of my family situation, one of the most important things to me was having that great family and that family dynamic and becoming a great dad and a great husband because of the family that I came from. So I think the pain was so much, and the reality kind of smacked me in the face as I was in that small town that I wasn't going to quit. I knew I had one life to live, and I knew if I didn't achieve it, I knew what was waiting for me, and I didn't want that. So I think that was it. Also moving in with my grandmother, she was always my biggest fan. I was born to my mom at 15. So my first few years, I lived with my grandmother and with my mom, and we always had that special bond. And almost every day of my life, my gran would look down at me and she'd say, "Nelson, you're going to make something of your life." And, she told me that so often, and she believed it so strongly. And I loved her so much that I wasn't going to let her down. And so I think a lot of that had the drive there. But when I graduated from college, I was just blown away. I was just like, holy cow, if somebody who came from where I came from could do this, what else can I do if I set a goal and work on personal development? And I became obsessed. And over the next 20 years, I got into commercial real estate right out of college. I became the number one salesperson worldwide for a top 5 commercial real estate firm several times. I started more than 10 businesses, including one of the largest privately held pet resorts in the country. And, I just celebrated my 25th wedding anniversary to my wife. And I can look back and really trace all of that to the belief that I can do anything I put my mind to after I was able to graduate college with goals in personal development.
Yeah. I think it's too, what I hear in there is you had that one person that believed in you. Sometimes that's all you need, right? Is that one thing, that one person. And when your grandma says, "Nelson, you're going to make something of yourself one day," I mean, that went into your ear, right? And tattooed into your brain, and it made you kind of become somebody, I would assume.
Yeah. You know what? I definitely think having one person believe in you is super important. My gran believing in me made me believe in myself. And I think that helped me believe in myself. And I think we all have to be our own biggest fans, because no matter how much people are screaming support from the sidelines, if you don't truly believe in yourself, it's not going to work out well for you. And again, my gran believed in me, and I gained strength from that. And because she believed so much in me, I started to believe in myself. If my gran sees potential and greatness in me, it must be there. And I started to believe in myself. And I think that combination, made a huge difference.
Yeah. One of the circuit of success is belief. And so I always talk about it, right? For me, it's belief in God, but also belief after my God is belief in myself, belief in, our company, belief in our values. But that is one of them, man, is you got to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself if you want to be successful, in my opinion. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Like I said, there's no amount of support outside of you that is going to compensate for the fact that you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah.
I think you have to be your own biggest fan. A lot of times it's not popular, and people look at it as you're either conceited that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about seeing that potential that lies within you. And once you see that potential, you'll never be the same. Once you see that potential and believe in that potential, you're never going to be the same. You're never going to settle for average again, because you see what greatness lies within you, and it lies within each one of us. I mean, you talked a little bit about your faith, and I think we're taught that through faith that we have greatness within us, and I think it's our duty to strive to become that best version of ourselves while we're here on earth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think that. Just a belief. I think your comfort zone gets bigger, right? Every time you take one step forward, your comfort zone just gets a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, right? And then it talks about the action. That's one of so it's attitude, your belief system, the actions that you take ultimately get your results. And then once you start to get results, you start to have a bigger vision, and then it just keeps going, right? Because if I ask you, who do you know that's had a bad attitude for a long period of time? It's had long-term sustainable success. Have you ever met anybody?
No,
right? And who has a belief, lack of belief in yourself or lack of belief in what you're doing? Have you ever met anybody that's had long-term sustainable success? No, right? And then action, same thing. We can hope, we can have the best business plans all day long, and people listening to this know this, but if we're not taking action, and I mean daily action, right? I call them RPAs, your revenue producing activities. If you're not doing those things every single day, you'll never be successful, right? Would you agree?
I agree 100%. I mean, you're touching on a lot of the things that are in our program, I Got Smarter. I mean, the first thing is the I, and that reminds you of the individual. All of your goals, all of your dreams start with the individual that you are. And you need to become that individual that can accomplish those goals. And then the A in I Got Smarter reminds us of the actions that we need to do to accomplish our goals. A goal just out there is a dream if you don't know what you need to do every single day to accomplish that goal.
Yeah. How important is that planning for you? Do you spend time planning throughout the year, throughout the day, the week, the month, quarter? I mean, what's that look like for you, for your success?
Yeah, and I Got Smarter, we break all of our goals down into 4-week sprints. So no matter how big that goal is, no matter how long it's going to take, we break that down into a 4-week sprint just because our mind can wrap around that. There's urgency there. But part of the I Got Smarter strategy is we have a morning ritual, and that morning routine, we plan out our entire day, and it takes all of 10 minutes to do. But now you control that day. You know exactly, you're working on yourself, you're working on gratitude, you're working on, the strategies found in I Got Smarter, and then you're planning out what your 3 goals are. We only have 3 goals that we focus on every 4-week sprint, and I Got Smarter. And we know every single day, what am I going to do to achieve this? What am I going to do to achieve goal B and goal C? And through the app, you automatically populate your day now. And after that 10 minutes or so, now you've got gratitude in your mind. You've learned some success strategies. You've reviewed your goals. You know what you need to do for your goals. And now it's self-populated, and all you have to do is start checking things off. And that is the biggest difference in anything. And also in the I Got Smarter strategy is you're able to invite a success partner. And we found that there's 95% more likely to achieve your goals if you have that G, that group or support system that's there with you, helping you, encouraging you, and supporting you. And we call it a success partner because you're not accountable to them. I mean, these aren't their goals. You're accountable to yourself, and they're there to help you stay accountable to do what you said you were going to do by supporting you, encouraging you, and motivating you.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how we'll let ourselves down, but we won't let somebody else down?
Absolutely. And
it's like you said, if you want to work out at 5:30 in the morning, if I know you're waiting at the end of the driveway for me, then probably going to get out of bed. But if it's just myself, well, then, there's a good chance I hit that snooze button or just turn the alarm off altogether.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's a 95% more likelihood that you're going to achieve those goals when you have that support system, that those people who know what you said you're going to do.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. So what habits and rituals, if I follow you around, am I going to see you're not missing day in and day out?
I mean, gratitude. I give gratitude every day through the app. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we realize is if you're not grateful for what you have now, chances are it doesn't matter what you get, you're just not going to be grateful for it. So we have that attitude of gratitude. We don't want to be satisfied, but we do want to be grateful in all things. So I'm always giving gratitude. I'm always learning. I love learning. I love success principles. And, I love watching YouTube videos and learning on that.
I find myself watching more YouTube than anything now. I mean, there's no TV hardly in my house for me.
Yeah, I mean, you get to pick exactly what you want to do. And I want to be productive. I want to use my time. One of the strategies in I Got Smarter is time is our most precious resource. And I don't want to waste a second of it. And, and that's not to say I won't veg out on a couple shows me and my wife like to watch, in bed, but I typically get about 10 minutes of it and I fall asleep. So it takes us about 4 nights to watch one episode.
Exactly. If you're like me, you got to rewind it. I'm like, what the hell happened the last 10 minutes? Exactly. I'm like, I don't remember any of that.
She gets frustrated with me because she's just like, by the time we turn it on and the first commercial, I look over and you're sleeping, but she deals with it.
That's right.
I'm learning. And then physical fitness is important to me. I work out, 5 days a week, and I love to hike. If I can hike during the weekend, I do that. I mean, I think those are some good things that you would see when you're following me around.
I like it. What do you wish you had more time to do? What's something that's like, man, if I just had an extra few hours a week or a day, whatever it may be, what are some of your passions?
I love to hike. I love the outdoors. I'm from Pennsylvania, and in Vegas, you've got to maybe travel a little bit more to enjoy that. But there's some beautiful stuff here. I've got a Harley. I love to ride, and don't get enough of that. I've got a convertible that I just forget about the entire world when I'm driving it. So I like to play too and kind of unwind, but yeah, there never seems to be enough time to do that.
Walk us through. I'm always fascinated by this as a parent and a business owner, is that drive home and then that flip of that switch from business owner, thinking about business, running the business all day, the emotions and the roller coaster of that, to now I got to go in and be husband and be dad and be productive at being those. Those are huge jobs, right? To be a great husband and a great dad. How did you find, because I know one of your sons just got married. Is that correct?
Yeah. My oldest just got married a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So you're in a little different stage. My youngest is a first grader, so I'm still going home and lots of craziness going on, so maybe it's different for you now, but what did you do to be in that moment and turn that switch off if you can, turn that switch off to be in that moment?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I struggled with that early on in life because I felt like I needed to be the great provider. And when I was the great provider, I wanted my wife to kind of be the Stepford wife, because I was making money and providing her, everything that she needed. And in my book, The Unlucky Sperm Club, I talk about that a lot, of how I failed as a husband because that was my mindset. But as I said here today, always my first two goals is I want to be the husband of the year and I want to be the father of the year. Now, you talk to my wife and my children, I'm a far cry from either one of those, but those are my goals, and I strive to do that. One thing I used to always think of is when I walked through that front door, I took an imaginary necklace off of my neck and I hung it outside of my home. And that was what I had to deal with at work. The commercial real estate deals and business and all of that. And I kind of took that off and said, okay, this is where that stops, including phone, including emails, and including the stress that went along with that. And then I, figuratively put on the new necklace of dad and husband and tried to do, take on that role. And that just kind of movement let me know that, this was what I needed to do. Another strategy we use in I Got Smarter is we use alter egos, and we design this perfect version of ourselves and we name them. My alter ego's name is Fred, and Fred is the perfect dad. He's the perfect husband. And whenever I find myself struggling, with either being a husband or a father, I start to ask Fred advice, and Fred always gives me the best advice. And it's become such a joke in our family. Like, if I lose my cool with my, I have a 15-year-old still at home. If I lose my cool with him, his comeback to me is, "Hey, Dad, can Fred come out and play, please?" And
Fred's a lot cooler.
Exactly. Fred never loses his cool. Fred would give us some slack and understanding. So I use that alter ego, and that really helps me become that better version of a husband and a father, and really every aspect of my life.
So what do you do, Nelson, on the days that maybe you didn't want to do it, meaning work? You didn't want to go and do that. You didn't want to chase that commercial deal. I mean, there's certainly days, I got to think you're just like the rest of us, right? That there's certainly days you just don't want to do it, but you still got to get in and do it. So what did you do? What were some tips maybe you have for that?
I love Post-its and quotes, and I've got a Post-it that's in my desk, and it says, "If you want to be successful, do the things that suck." And believe me, there are some things that suck out there. And fortunately, as I said here today, I've been able to exit some of those businesses and retire from commercial real estate and just focus on building this new business. I Got Smarter and my personal brand. And I mean, there's days that I don't necessarily love, but man, I'm doing something that I just, I just love getting up and I know what I'm doing and I know who I'm helping. And I have a lot less sucky days doing this job than in commercial real estate or running businesses and dealing with disgruntled employees and customers. So I don't have as many of those, but I just knew, like, this is the reason that I was able to be successful, is because I could handle those things that suck and I could do it when I didn't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
And I think we all have to do that. Otherwise, you don't build up that momentum. And if you're always going to take a day off when you don't feel like doing it, whether it be working out or being a good husband or a good father, you're just going to throw your hands up and forget everything. You lose all that momentum and you don't build up that goodwill towards it, and people can't count on you. So I think that's one of those leadership qualities that we have to develop if we're going to be successful in any of those things, because you're always going to have those days that suck. You're always going to have those days that you have to get through, and you just got to find your way through it. Otherwise, you lose all that momentum you've built up.
Yeah. So when you look back at the decisions you've made and all these businesses, and what are some of the risks that you're happy that you took?
Yeah. I mean, I've taken huge risk. I invested in some children's daycare centers, and the guy embezzled $1 million from me and my father-in-law. And it came to light in 2008 and 2009 during the end of the world, and everything was imploding around us. And to top that off, my father-in-law, who was a dentist, was going to have to retire because he was going through kidney failure and needed a kidney transplant. And he had invested a large amount of his savings into these businesses, and they were great for 5 years. But as the recession kicked in there, we started to see the cracks, and it ended up having to take that over. And I knew nothing about running businesses at this time. I was a commercial real estate broker, and that's how I met this guy. And I just threw money at it, and it was a great investment. But then I had to step in and figure all this stuff out, because my father-in-law couldn't afford to walk away from that money. And a few years into it, I'm in charge of hiring, and one of my directors of this chain of children's daycare centers is leaving town, and I have to hire another one. And my regional director comes to me and says, "I want you to interview this guy." And I'm like, "Oh, just stop right there. I'm not hiring a man to run a children's daycare center." And it probably was illegal. And but a man has a target on his back when it comes to daycares. And I didn't want to do that to him, and I didn't want to do it for me. But anyhow, the guy was incredible. He worked 10 years for a national daycare operator. I ended up interviewing him because they kept, telling me how great he was, and we didn't find anybody else. Well, long story, I ended up hiring him. 2 years later, I come home and I turn on the TV because my friend calls me, and this is how the Unlucky Sperm Club opens up. And he's like, "You want to turn on the TV, man?" And I'm like, "What's going on?" And I turn it on, and the news is outside of one of my daycare centers, and a picture of this man is there, and it says accused child molester, running local child care center. And that's where I realized falling to your knees is not, just in the movies. Like you literally lose that. And that was one of those things that I just, the world's imploding as we speak. There's no commercial real estate deals. Businesses are failing. And then bam, this happens. And so, but at the end of the day, a lot of hard work, a lot of sleepless nights. Come to find out, he was a child molester, but he had only molested, and I say that in air quotes, unfortunately, but he had molested a couple of family relatives and nobody at the daycares. And fortunately, he ended up getting sentenced to life in prison after that. But we were able to recover because none of the abuse took place at one of our centers. But that was one of the hardest things that I ever had to get through. And then a few years after that, we were able to sell those businesses and get my father-in-law his money back, and able to, recover from that. But that's one of the risks that I was glad I took, because believe me, I was ready to throw up my hands and just say,
oh yeah,
what, I'm ready to start over. Like, there's no way out of this, but kept plugging away.
I'm going to switch my cameras here. Even though it's got all this stuff, I can't figure it out why it's got my zoom and all that. But I wanted to do this. So this is your website, obviously. If you go to nelsontressler.com, lots of great stuff on there. You can see this. I got smarter, everything. But let's go to your Instagram here. So when you look at this, and obviously you've posted all these things, so you can stop me. What are some of your favorite ones on here, and why? Like, I'm responsible for my success. I am true to myself. I am where I am because I choose to be here. When you hear me talk about those things.
Yeah, I love those quotes. Like I said, I love studying, and I'll listen to a YouTube video, and they'll say something like that, and I'll either write it down word for word, or I'll try to put my own spin on it. But that's one of the philosophies in I Got Smarter is I choose to be exactly where I'm at. And I think when people realize that and they take responsibility, each one of us chooses to be exactly where we are today for the most part. And I know there's people out there who are in tough situations, and that choice is kind of taking out of their hands.
Right.
But for the most part, we choose to be exactly where we're at. And if we don't like it, we get to choose to go somewhere else.
That's right.
And that's very, very liberating to understand that we are in control. And I think the subtitle of my book, The Unlucky Sperm Club, is you're not a victim of your circumstances. You're a product of your choices. And I truly believe that. Like, you get to choose exactly what you want in this life. It may not be easy. You may be starting from far behind, but if you continue to make those choices to get you there, eventually you will be able to live the life that you want to live.
Amen to that, man. So where do our listeners find more of you? Right here, nelsontressler.com.
Yeah,
create your own luck.
Yep. You can go to nelsontressler.com. The book, The Unlucky Sperm Club, You're Not a Victim of Your Circumstances, but a Product of Your Choices. You can find that there, but it's also available everywhere books are sold, including Amazon and Audible. If you like listening to your books, that's the way I listen to books. And then I Got Smarter is available at Android and Apple at the app stores. So you can go there and check that app out. And then
so I get that app, then what?
Then you get the app. There's a self-assessment. So you'll go through and really figure out what goals you want to follow. We'll teach you the strategies, the philosophies, the step-by-step process of what I learned over the last 25 years of being obsessed with goals and really designing a life that I couldn't have even imagined. That's why I'm out here sharing my story. Is this isn't something that I just pulled off of the internet and posted out there. I mean, I've lived this. I've come from some very tough circumstances, and I'm living this life that, I mean, I couldn't even have imagined this life, being married 25 years and raising 3 productive kids. That's the great thing with goals. Goals are not just for the person who achieves them. Goals are generational. Yeah. And not only have goals changed my life, they're changing my children's life, and they'll change their children's life. That's why I'm out there pitching this, because I know the power that we're dealing with. And my object is I want to change the world one person and one inspiring goal at a time. And the way that I'm going to change the world is by changing your world when you sign up for this program and learn how to really set a goal and then actually achieve it.
That's beautiful. I love that passion and that mission, man. So our listeners, they go on to this, and then what are they? Is it a monthly fee, a yearly fee? What's that look like?
Yeah, it's a monthly fee. And when I started, I Got Smarter, I never wanted money to be the problem because I was there and knew what it was like. So our slogan is, it takes you 10 minutes and $10 a month. And if your goals aren't worth 10 minutes and $10 a month, you need bigger goals. And that's where we've come out with that. And just looking for a lot of people to get in there and change their lives and learn these strategies, because really anybody can do it. If you have enough time, enough energy, and enough focus, there's not a goal that you can't achieve.
I love it. Awesome. Well, we'll put this in the show notes where they can find you. Obviously, you go up here, the Unlucky Sperm Club, go to your website, NelsonTressler.com. Man, it's been great having you on the Circuit of Success today.
Thanks, Brett.
Tune in next week for another episode of The Circuit of Success with Brett Gilliland on the lineupmedia.fm podcast network. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and through our website, circuitofsuccess.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and email any questions to info@circuitofsuccess.com.
This podcast was a presentation of lineupmedia.fm.